Okay, so basically in week 8, okay, session 8, we're going to discuss the transportation network in supply chain. And this slides is based on the chapter 14. If you have the books from Professor Chopra, chapter 14 with the same title, so transportation network in supply chain, discuss more about transportation function, like what is the role of transportation in supply chain itself, and then how to evaluate the uh, strength and weakness between different modes of transportations, and mostly about the and more detail, like the role of several stakeholders like infrastructure owner and policies in transportations, and it's how it affects the supply chain. But since it's a little bit theoretical, so I combine it with the several um, mm, uh, technical discussion related to how to design transportation networks, how to model it, yeah, and several basic model related to, especially optimization model related to transportation networks. And from that technical stuff, we can identify the strengths and weakness of various transportation network design options. Like there is several network, like the simplest one about transportation network, like direct delivery or direct networks. When you want to send some things from your place to your customer place, the simplest way is just send it, right? Just send it directly. But is that the most efficient way to transport your products? Maybe yes, maybe not. Because there are several approaches, like you can put it in a hub first, or consolidate it in the warehouse, or using like a transshipment option, something like that. So that's we're going to discuss a little bit at the end of this chapter 8 discussion. And then we can also identify the trade-off between that a shipper may consider when designing their transportation network design. Okay, so yeah, this is the contents. And yeah, first, like I said earlier, we start the discussion by try to know what is the relationship, and then to see the role of transportation and the decision being made in transportation itself in effect to the supply chain. Okay, so sometimes we are difficult to differentiate what is the difference between transportation and logistics. Okay, yeah, because those terms come like normally or sometimes close together, transportation, logistics. But from the perspective of supply chain activities, or several reference related to supply chain, normally we will how to say, we will say that transportation is part of the logistics. Okay, so and logistics itself is part of supply chain. That's the several reference related to supply chain categorize the position of logistics, transportation in supply chain. So when we talk about logistics, there are several activities, right? Including material handling, including warehousing, including procurement, also sometimes put in the logistics, but mostly about the inbound and then outbound. And a major part of it is about transportation. So basically, when we talk about transportations, it will refer to how or what kind of activity we are doing on our logistics process to move the products, okay, from one location to another location that is requested. So it's a way. So it makes a way for the products to be moved along the supply chain level. Like normally we can say it like move from the supplier to the customer. And since it's a normally physical process, transportation is commonly take a significant component of the cost incurred in the supply chain level. So, so it is very important that if you are having a great amount of costs related to your transportations, it is very important to know that there is several way or several things you need to concern about whenever you're dealing with the supply chain, transportation in the supply chain. And perhaps one of the good example on how a success story related to a good management of transportation can be in the supply chain can be affected to your company is shown by the how the IKEA, one of the we can call multinational company, it's I think the last time I read that it's already available in 42 countries around the world, and it shows how, yeah, besides their products is good, they also rely a lot on the transportation function to transport their products, because you know that most of IKEA's products is a physical product, so you cannot like download the product and then directly appear at your house, something like that, right? So you need to, whenever you buy it, whether you buy it online or buy it offline in their stores, there is a needs to transport those products from that store to your house. And even though that the the transportation cost normally given to the customer, but still, if your cost about if the transportation cost of your product is too high, then your product is not attractable anymore, attractive anymore to the customer. Yeah, as you know, if the transportation cost itself is much higher than the product price, then it's gonna be a problem to sell those things. Okay, so then yeah, one of the advantage of IKEA's products, so that they can reduce the transportation cost, is they can make a modular design of their furniture, so it's not take much space to be transported, safe and reliable when being in transport. And even for a large size products, it can still considerably easier to be transported compared to the other products. And those are several advantages that IKEA have, so that their transportation cost is somewhat effective compared to their competitor. Okay. And next is when you talk about transportation in supply chain. When we want to make a decision regarding our transportations activities or transportation functions, we need to understand also it is not only it is not a one party decision that you can uh, how to say, solely consider when you make a decision, because several factors can affect your transportation decisions, including you need to know several parties that normally involved when there is a transportation functions happen in your company. So first of all, I will try to introduce those parties. The most common parties, perhaps we can call it, there are four parties normally involved in the transportation's decisions. The most common, perhaps, like number one is the shipper. Shipper is what? Shipper is the party or the organizations that require the movement of the products. So in supply chain, yeah, we have several levels of supply chain, right? If we simplify it, we will have supplier, manufacturer, retailer, and customer, perhaps like that. Or even more simplified, like your supplier, your company, and then your customers. Okay. So now the first party that needs the transportation function is called the shipper. Okay. So normally it's the customer, because customer buy products to our company, and then they are the party that require the movement from the product between one point to another point in this example. But it can be different things also. For example, when we need to buy, when our company want to buy products from our supplier, so the one that become the shipper, so-called shipper, is the it's our company. Now our company is the customer, and that particular supplier that we need is the manufacturer of the product, or the product owner. So that is the one party that of course will be involved, and then need to be considered. Their consideration need to be taken care of when you making your transportation decision. And the second one is the party that moved the product itself. In this literature that I refer to, it's called the carrier. Okay, the one that carry the products. Okay, so the one that move the products. It can be a logistics company, it can be a third-party logistics, it can be a shipping liner. Okay, those party are called the carrier. And for a carrier, normally the things that being their consideration are something like what kind of vehicle are going to use to transport the products, and then what about the cost, what about the fixed cost of operating those infrastructure or using those vehicles, and then the cost related to the trips of the how long they need to carry the products, or how far they need to carry the products. And for the shipper itself, the one that needs or require the movement, of course, the cost, normally they will consider about how much money they need to spend to move those products. The amount of money perhaps could be related to the whether it's, of course, the transportation cost itself, moving from one point to another point. And another thing is that if you move a lot, perhaps you need to have an inventory later. So inventory cost may be also another consideration. If you have inventory cost, you need to place to save it. It's called facility cost. Yeah, those are the things that a shipper and carriers normally consider when they make a transportation decisions. So yeah, of course, those two parties are the most significant, have the significant influence on doing the decisions. But other than those two parties, there are two others party that perhaps not less important compared to the other two. Number three, there are party so-called the infrastructure owner and operator. So transportations need infrastructure, right? Whatever mode of transportation you are going to use, there will be a need for an infrastructure, proper infrastructure to support those function to be works well. So this operator or owner of the infrastructure can be a private entity, can be a public entity. They will handle infrastructure such as road, toll road, port, airport, and many things related to those infrastructure. So whenever you going to decide the transportation decisions regarding transportation decision for your company, you need to also understand that what is the condition of the infrastructure in your particular area. Okay, so that's another party you need to think about. And the last one is perhaps this is represent the governments or the body that set the policy for the transportations. This is another party that is, even though you may not directly involved with the policymaker, but the policy that made by the policymaker will widely affect your cost structure of the transportations. Perhaps like in several countries, there is a government that is manage the policy quite well, support for the ease of doing business, ease of the transportations. So that's one example of a good transportation policy share a party. Okay. So, but it's not happen to every area. So you need to know all this party being involved before you able to make a very good transportation decision. And yeah, each party may have different perspective. So here are those 4 different perspectives from 4 different parties. Okay. You can read this one. I think I will not explain it in more detail because I already explored it earlier in my explanation. And okay, other than those 4 parties being involved in the transportation decisions, we need to also see there are a few mega trends or few, yeah, we cannot call it mega, so it's just a trend which influence the future of logistics and transportation decisions. Well, the source of this uh, um, slides is based on one paper. You can see that source, but basically it is updated time to time. This one perhaps like from 2015. So I guess like 2020 and 2021 will be different because from the time that this report being made, they are not yet impacted by the COVID situations, okay, the pandemic situations. Perhaps if there is a new version of this study, I think it will be involving like the resilience of the transportation, how they manage the risk of not able to deliver due to several considerations that we face during this pandemic era. So, but anyway, several trends still apply here. Like, for example, here they mention safety is one of the concern and getting more and more important topics, because we know that global transportation now is very vulnerable if you don't have a very good safety procedure applied for your transportation decision. And then transportation now also mostly encouraged to have a less impact on the bad climate change effect. And then another one is about urbanization, e-commerce, and I think those 4 is quite related. The more people move to the city, they have a better access on the technology on the internet. Now e-commerce is getting more and more popular. So mobile digital world also take place of how transportation is now getting more and more um, needs for every business aspects that is available. So the trends of making a efficient decision related to your transportations is pure. It cannot be avoided. Will be affected by this type of trends in the logistics. And yeah, here is another report that you can see. Other than those trends, driver for a new transportation concepts in transportation also another interesting topics that we can always discuss in the class. Here several points that is being summarized from that report is that at least three big part, which is first that nowadays that there is needs to have a very efficient match between supply and demand. Why is it like that? Whenever you have exceed in one part of the supply chain, whether it's supply or the demand, there will be a consequences. Like if the supply is more than the demand, there will be like a lot of waste on the inventory. But if there is more demand then compared to the supply, there will be a scarcity of the products, the price can be increased. Okay, so for example, let's say like in our recent I'm not sure if you following about the energy sectors, that there is a scarcity of energy currently happen in the world, like China demanding for a lot more coal to start up again their productivity of their manufacturer. Meanwhile, the production of coal is not able to catch up with those demand. So nowadays the coal price is getting skyrocketed. Yeah, so that's one example of demand is much higher than the supply. So that in terms of transportations, that needs to be addressed as well. Okay, so there is a new concept needed to transport to fulfill those type of demands. Okay, because the higher the transportation cost, the higher the consumer price becomes. This also happened for the scarcity of container. Yeah, container there is being used now is also limited in number. So that's another problem that we can discuss also about transportation. And another area is about future developments. Because we know that more and more products needed to be transported because number of people in the world is growing. So but however the bottlenecks in our transportation infrastructure could not catch up with those increasing transportation volume in the world. So that's why those are one of the future development that need to be considered, or that can be a new driver for a new transportation concept. And then another like environment concern, like society, economy, politics, including the ecological, like climate change and stuff. And then the future development perhaps will be also consider about how technology will play important part in the driver of new transportation concepts. Well, the third one is perhaps like how transportations can, the new transportation concept will help to improve the quality of the transportation as well as reduce the cost. For example, using modern technology and IT, efficient combination of transport. Well, this is a very classic one. Optimize a route and planning, and then aggregate the transportation, and then combining between different transportation modes or multimodal transports. Later on, we will discuss more about multimodals, intermodals, synchromodals, and what are those in the next slide. But before that, I will introduce also about how you need to also know several transportation modes or means of transportation, so that you, with this kind of knowledge, you can have a better way to analyze the transportation decisions that need to be made for your company. So first of all, what is means of transportation? It is things, or of, here they say, the vehicle that you use to serve the movement of goods, passenger, such as, like, for example, it's trucks, train, or inline, or vessels. Okay, and the modes itself, we can at least make it become three big cluster: land, water, and air. Okay, and for each transportation modes options, there are several modes that can be chosen. Like for land, the transportation modes perhaps like road, like using less truck, that is consists of truck, less than truckload, or full truckload, and then transportation modes related to rail, like railways, and then transportation mode related to specific products that can be transported through pipeline, like gas, and then yeah, natural gas, and then what else? Water, yeah, and transportation modes related to water also. There are several, like inland waterways, deep sea shipping, or short sea shipping, like all of those. Yeah, we call it vessel, but there are several different vessels also for each modes. And then the air traffics, of course, there is airplane, and nowadays we already see like development of drones also on unmanned aerial vehicles to serve the several needs for transportations. But anyway, each of these transportation modes and means of transportation, you need to understand the characteristic of it. So for example, if you want to transport a small product but high value in numbers, you will not use like a vessel. It is better to transport it through air instead of vessel, right? So those kind of characteristics you need to understood, so that you can make a decision about transportation more efficient. Okay, now so that we know about that, here we will discuss several transportation modes and the means of transportation related to it, and the characteristics and the key issues. Okay, first, the one that perhaps considerably the most expensive transportation modes, but somehow it has like disruption nowadays due to the pandemics, right? So, but anyway, airlines or air transportation modes represented by airline, normally they will have two division, one that carry passenger, another one that carry cargo or products. So most of the cost in the flight is incurred when normally in the takeoff, right? When the thrust of the plane is getting burn a lot of fuel, and so that to have this modes is getting cheaper. There are several ways, including that already being understood by many airline company, which is trying to maximize the revenue generated per flight. But sometimes, yeah, they even have the field for it, like airline revenue management. Okay, if you are interested on that, you can try to search those keywords, and you will find a lot of interesting topics related to how you can maximize the revenue from each generated flight of the airline. And another airline offer a fast but more expensive mode, because they know that, okay, if I cannot carry a lot of passenger or carry a lot of products, I just carry a little but give more expensive. Okay, so this perhaps more suitable for airlines, but somehow there is not a lot of passenger, or not a lot of products are really need this service. Okay, so but anyway, this makes the characteristic for airlines or air transportation mode. It is more suitable for small and high value items, or high value can also be interchangeable with time sensitive. Sometimes the value is not high, but when it is needed and urgently needed, so it's time sensitive, so it is better to, it is sometimes become the options for transporting using airline. And several key issues related to airline management that might help the airline company to reduce their costs, such as issue on how they will identify the locations and the hubs for their airline, and then assigning the plane to the routes, okay, like route planning, and then creating the maintenance schedule, scheduling the crew, and managing the price, or price management, or the one that it is also belong to revenue management. Okay, now we continue talk about the land networks, or land transportation modes. Normally it represented by a trucks or some vehicle that could carry the products, and one of its advantage is it is able to deliver door-to-door shipment. Yeah, what it means that it can directly take the product from the door of the shipper, okay, to the door of the customer, so directly arrive at their place. It is considerably more expensive than rail, so later maybe we will have rail, but somehow it's shorter in delivery time. But of course, if you compare with the airline will be faster, but airline cannot have the door-to-door service. They can only stop at the airport. Okay. Yeah, this industry, or trucks transportation, consists of two major segments: the one that providing truckload, and the one that providing less than truckload services. Truckload in the US consider that the one that carry more than 50,000 pounds. Okay, it's considered as truckload services. And if it is less than that, so normally it will combine the products in from several delivery, and it is called the less than truckload. So the first one is more suitable for products that is the one that you carry a lot of product from the same source of supplier to the same source of customer. Okay, And the later one, the less than truckload, is more suitable for the package delivery, like the one that you often use when you buy from e-commerce. Normally they will use less than truckload because the product that you order should be combined with the several other products so that it can be have less cost to be delivered at the same same segment or same time. And several key issues in the operation of truckload and less than truckload is that first about regulations, and then because it's a heavy duty load, heavy duty works to do, sometimes there is a lot of problems related to the truck driver about the fatigues, and it leads to accidents. Another important things that is often discussed about truckload and less than truckload is that there is often deadheading. Okay, whenever you finish the delivery, your truck is empty, but it still need to go back to the factory or to the company that you belongs to. So it create a backhaul problems, or sometimes called deadheading. It means that it's full going out, but it's going back. When it's going back, it's empty. The cost of those backhaul will be going to the company that is have the services. So it's not good because those costs sometimes quite high. And okay, another thing is about transportation mode related to rail. Okay, well, rail is perhaps the opposite of air, but somehow, yeah, because it's more like it's still similar with, but somehow it has its similarity as well. First of all, it's cannot it's the same, cannot they have a door-to-door delivery, door-to-door services, because if you use rail and you want to have your product delivered at your door, you need to have another transportation mode to support that. Okay, normally it will be the trucks. And yeah, normally rail is being used because it is the price structure is suitable with heavy load products. So the product that is heavy, and when you have the many delivery and carrying large high density products over a long distance, so rail is very attractive. Yeah, that's why several products like coal, or like sometimes that can be containerized, like agriculture products, sometimes is delivered via rail, especially if your country have good rail networks. Indonesia and Philippines perhaps not really suitable because we are the demography or the topology of our geography is like more islands based. So perhaps the next one will be more suitable to be concentrate on if for this type of geographical area. Okay, so next one is water and shipping networks. So ship or water modes, okay, vessel is normally considerably as the one of the cheapest compared to those previous modes. Okay, so that's why there is a lot of international trade or transportation choice selected these transportation modes for their global trades, because global trade will need a lot of will travel through distances, so it's quite far, Sometimes it's not available through the rail networks, and it is too expensive if you are using air networks. Okay, so that's why in global trade, water transport is the most dominant modes to for shipping all of products, any type of products. Okay, but the trade-off is that water transport considerably also the slowest of all modes, because there are several significant delays. First, of course, in the port itself, okay, or in the terminals. Another is that like the speed of the vessel, especially the international vessel that serve the global trade. The higher their speed, the more pollution and the more cost they generated. Okay, so that's why sometimes the speed also have the vessel have their standard speed already. Okay, so several key issues that often considered in this transportation modes, such as delay at the port, customs, security, management container, right? Like what we see in the news also. And then, yeah, it's also limited for archipelago area country like Indonesia or Philippines. Perhaps it's not often be the problems, but for a landlocked country, they may not have access to the port, so it's limited for several areas. Okay, and another one that we are going to consider or discuss is the multimodal. So we have several single modal considered earlier, but the trend or in practice there almost no single modal except for the truck networks. Okay, most often we will use multimodal combination between one or two. Okay, and then if we have more, then we can consider it as a intermodal. So it's okay. So intermodal, the freight transport with two or more transport in the same transportation unit or in the container. But for the multimodal, you will use two or more transportation modes only. So intermodal is more specific to the containerized, okay, containerized units. And there is also a terminology called co-modals. Okay, I'm not really understand this one, but somehow, yeah, there is those terminology, but most often like multimodal, intermodal, and the last one that is considered that is more that attract a lot of people and researchers nowadays, so-called synchromodals. So it's basically using either multimodal or intermodals, but you synchronize or you doing cooperative use of the transportation modes, including real-time transportation decisions. Okay, and yeah, after those theory, now we will focus more on the how the transportation network design itself, the design of the networks will influence also your transportation decision. Okay, so here I start with the introduction of transportation networks. Okay, transportation networks normally discuss about the a framework. It's used to be it used as a discussion framework to routes create the path in between locations in your networks. Okay, it can be a permanent networks or it can be a scheduled service. Permanent networks or permanent tracks are normally the one that has already the path, the ways, okay, like roads, rails, and canals. Or scheduled service is more like the networks will be depends on the use or on the needs of the transportations. Like airline, you will have the networks in some scheduled times, trains also, something like that. And we will also discuss about there is various type of link. Yeah, so let's say the location that you're going to visit in your transportation nodes, you will say that as a points. So from one point to another point, normally there are several links, okay, which normally represent what kind of transportation modes or other things, okay. And transportation networks used to being discussed also as a consideration to create accessibility between the one point to another point. And it is often used for integration process to know the structure and the flow of the transportation networks. Yeah. And if we talk about the structure itself, there are at least three main structure of transportation networks. The first one we call centralized, in which we have one central, we can call it hub, something like that, for consolidating all of those nodes in the networks. And another one is the decentralized. So there are several separated hubs, and each of the nodes being the transportation's sources or transportation's ends or goals can be accessed only through the separate decentralized hub. Okay. And another one is so-called distributed. When you have all the nodes are connected, so there will be no hubs, and all the nodes are connected somehow in the networks. And about the topology of the networks, there are two basic ideas connecting those. First, of course, you need transportation networks is similar to the networks itself that you study in the class of OR or operation research class. So networks will consist of nodes and links. And in the transportation networks, we normally consider whether this link is unidirectional or one way, or bidirectional or two way. Okay, if it is a unidirectional or one way, so whenever a arc entering a node from a unidirectional, it can only have the entry, right? From that entry, they can have another exit through using the same unidirectional. But if that particular links consists of bidirectional, so at one point they have entry and also have the exit from the same point that connected the nodes between links that connected between nodes itself. Okay. Yeah, there are several, much more than this one. This is just several examples of transportation networks or networks topology. There is point-to-point networks this one is the simplest one. So all nodes is connected somehow from one point to another point. There is a hub and spoke. Okay, there is one hub in the middle, and then the spoke is the like a customer that connecting to those hub. And then the tree, so it's like there is several levels, okay, several levels, several echelon, which each level can only connect to its upper or lower level. And there is a mesh topology, yeah, it's look like that. Linear topology, it's look like that. Yeah. So basically, there are the design options, or how do you design your transportation networks. Normally, it will basically will answer can be addressed using these three questions, three basic questions to consider when and how to design your transportation networks. Okay, so this one is basically specific to the transportation network between supplier or buyer. So just one level. So first, should you use a direct transportation or an intermediate site? Okay, which one gonna be more cost wise? Which one is more gonna be like give a better user satisfaction? And then second one, should the intermediate site, okay, if the answer of the first one is the, okay, you can consolidate it somehow, somewhere in an intermediate site. But now the question is that, should the intermediate site, or normally called warehouse or distribution center, stock the product, or they can use like just-in-time approach using like cross-docking or transshipment from another location? Okay, if you have an intermediate like a warehouse or a DC, you will use you will use that facility to stock the product, or you use like whenever it needed, then it's directly go there and then consolidate. Cannot be more than 1 or 2 hours, the product should go. So those are another decision. And then the last one is like, should each delivery route for supply or route for delivery or supply should go to a single destination or multiple destination? This will determine you will going to use truckload or less than truckload. Okay. Yeah. Another approach is like that is not from this network topology. You can also have another approach of transportation, so-called tailored transportations. It means like it's really depends on what you need. There is no there is a lot of best practice, but your company could use also from what you really need, or specifically with what your transportation needs. So it is called tailored transportations, the use of different transportation mode based on customer and product characteristics. So the factors that normally consider in tailoring your transportation modes are whether the customer distance, is it far or near, the density of the products, customer size, product size, and then product demand and value. Okay, yeah, then we will discuss one by one about this one. And several transportation network design models. Okay, first, we already see previously there is a very straightforward, intuitive transportation network design, point to point. So from one point can access another point directly. Why don't we just use that one? Yeah. So first of all, of course, point to point will works. Yeah, can works directly because that's the basic approach that is appear regarding how do you transport things. One people or one organization produce it, directly send to the one that requested. Yeah. But again, point-to-point networks, even it's connect directly without interruptions, it can have somehow problem also, because it when we, yeah, of course the advantage, it will be minimized connection and travel time, no interdependency between links and hubs, but it lost the generality or the advantage of economic of scale. Okay, so sometimes it can be cheaper if you can consolidate the products. Okay, and this is example of we don't say that point to point doesn't work. Sometimes point to point can works because when you have a large enough quantity being ordered by your customer or your buyer, and then when it wants to be arrived directly from the supplier without any interruptions, then this can be the best practice that you can use. Normally, this type of transportation networks is modeled as general transportation modes. Okay, so if you have a problems that is look like this, Okay, look like this, point to point. So you need to only consider which supplier should supply which buyer, right? And then when you have the limit, upper bound and lower bound in the networks, so you can use this general transportation models. Okay, I'm not going to discuss this in details. This is very basics. You are going to minimize the cost, and then your networks have the upper bound and lower bound, or supply capacity and then the demand of each node. So you want to be able to supply all your demand with the minimum transportation cost. Okay, this is general transportation model. And another one is that, okay, what if I cannot do the direct point-to-point delivery? And it is also best practice because some, well, let's say in this example is how there is a milk run from multi-supplier or multi-buyer locations are being planned efficiently in Toyota. So basically it's like this. When Toyota produce their products, sometimes they need to buy from several suppliers, right? They need to take from the several suppliers to manufacture their products. So, but not all suppliers are needed in a huge amount of their products. So some supplier you need to only small batch of this one, small batch of another one. So they need to do a milk run. So you visit several suppliers before go back to your locations. Okay. So in this one, the approach is not direct, yeah, not direct point to point, but you do a routing, as you can see here. If you are doing a routing problems, then your problem become a vehicle routing problems. Okay, we will discuss this like I don't know if we have time, like the next week or the following weeks. And it is more complex than point to point, but somehow it can induce you with the introduce you with a more cost saving instead of the previous one. Okay, maybe I will explain this one later when we discuss about VRP. But basically it's like this. The objective is still the same with the previous one, minimize the transportation cost. And VRP models, a graph or networks is considered, and there are several constraints being involved or introduced for the most simple VRP problems. For example, like where the route can only be visited, the customer can only be visited by one vehicle in the solutions. Okay, so it can be visited once. Okay, and then there is a limitation on the vehicle capacity, and then there is a limitation also in the number of vehicles. Okay. If you want to know more about this model, we can have a discussions. But if not, maybe we'll go to this model again in later in the course, perhaps the next week or the following weeks. It depends. Okay. Another one is different with those two, point-to-point and milk run. It is called hub and spoke. So hub and spoke basically try to use the advantage of hub or a consolidation process in your networks. So the spokes mean the customer that is connected to those hub. Okay, a pure hub and spoke networks will connect every location to a single location called hub. But later on, you will see there is several extension of this model, hub and spoke. But basically, a network structure of hub and spoke allow greater flexibility within the transportation system through a concentrated flow because they will go to the hub itself. It can significantly have less route to serve the networks. and it can induce the economic of scale based on the connections and high frequency services. So hub and spoke, you can find the application in many network design, like create hub and spoke for airplane, create hub and spoke for port, something like that. Okay, and there are okay, now we talk about how it can be illustrated. It looks like this. So hub is the one that in the square there, and we have a non-hub nodes. Yeah, the spoke normally called non-hub nodes, and we have normally link between hub and the non-hub. Yeah, and sometimes hub and spoke problems consider also link between the hub. Okay, when you have the link between the hub, normally it will have there will be exist like some kind of a discount value that considerably as the consideration economic of scale effect for consolidating your products in the hub. Okay, and here we have two type of allocation schemes in hub and spoke. First, if is the single allocation, in which that one non-hub nodes can only connect it to the one hub nodes. Okay, but for the multiple allocation, one non-hub node can be connected to the more than one hub. Okay, as you can see in the picture on the left side, each single allocation, each hub can only connect it to the its non-hub can only connect it to one hub, cannot be two. But the second one in multiple allocations, it's different. And there are several examples of form of hub. You can consider as a tree, ring, general, and complete. Okay, you will find this terminology in several papers. Normally, they will use just the complete one, but sometimes they will have the tree, ring, or another one. Well, one of the simplest single allocation p-hub medium problems first formulated in 1987. So it's actually similar with the p-median problem, but instead in p-median problems we only consider how to connect which customer to the which depot or which hub. Okay, but in the single allocation p-hub median problems, you will have another consideration, which there is a transportation between products in the hub. Okay, so how do you consider this one? You can use this model. Okay, another one. Okay, the first one is the single allocations. The second one is the multiple allocation. Okay, there are several differences here. And there are also several hub and spoke models, including the one that combined with p-hub center or covering problems, something like that. Okay, and yeah, this one just several more way of modeling the hub. Okay, I tried to find also one paper related to our regions. Here is in the Philippines, there is a paper discussing about intermodal hub and spoke transportation networks for archipelagic country, and they have an example of Philippines. So here, when we see Philippines, actually I see similarity with Indonesia. There are many islands, and each islands normally clustered in the regions. So many small size islands need to be have the transportations covered them quite well, because anyway, this is part of the country. Okay, so how can you use hub and spoke models that will fit with the characteristics of these Philippine maritime transportations? So basically, if you see this paper, you can see that they use the they try this between single allocation, multiple allocation, and come up with a models that is suitable for this area. So I think it's an interesting paper to read. But anyway, that's not gonna be your homeworks, don't worry. But I think it's also good to read for that paper. Okay, I think that's the end of my presentation today. I hope this can enrich your knowledge about transportation network design. And if you need the materials and need the paper that I cite for this discussion today, yeah, feel free to contact me. Okay, I think that's all for today. We already have our discussion earlier. So don't worry, don't forget that next week I will start to ask you and grade your progress. Okay, so prepare 5 minutes. You don't have to bring a slide, but try to have a progress. If you have a slide, it will be better, but it's only 5 minutes. Try to use those time well. Okay. Yeah, before I close, is there any question?